Hello and welcome. You're about to watch the third of our anxiety videos, Strategies for Reducing Anxiety. This is part of the Wellbeing Education Resilience Programme. We would like to highlight the Face COVID video by Russ Harris. If you haven't already seen it, please take 5 minutes to watch as it gives a great overview of how to support well-being as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. You can click directly on the link when viewing this presentation in slideshow mode. This video will be looking at strategies to reduce anxiety. Some of the topics touched upon in this video may be discussed in further detail in the concept index video. This will be indicated to you using this star. They may also be touched upon in some of the other webinar videos in the programme. It may be helpful to take a moment to familiarise yourself with the titles of some of these. Should you have any questions in regards to these videos, please forward these to your mental health lead and they can be discussed in one of our network meeting Q&As. Here you can see what will be covered in this presentation. If you see the thought bubble symbol, it will mean there is an activity for you to have a go at should you wish to. Simply pause the video and give it a go. Remember to always be kind to yourself when watching these video presentations. Be aware of how you're feeling throughout and should you need to, take a break or check in with a friend. There are also some suggestions on the last slides for places you can go if you would like to seek further support.
We first wanted to talk about the 5 ways to wellbeing, as incorporating these 5 things in our day-to-day lives, or just introducing some of these, can really help reduce our anxiety. So the 5 ways to wellbeing are take notice, give, be active, connect, and keep learning. And if you'd like any more information around these, then please just go ahead towards the concept index.
So we all experience stress from time to time. It's our body's natural response to danger. But we know that too much stress for too long can interfere with our day-to-day lives and can actually make us feel quite poorly. So the stress bucket is there to help us to understand how we experience stress and to address our stress levels, and also to be mindful of how other people might experience stress as well. So the size of your stress bucket reflects how vulnerable you might be to stress. So for example, your genes, your life experiences, or different environmental factors can impact the size of the stress bucket. So if you're quite vulnerable to stress, you will have a smaller stress bucket. That means it will overflow more quickly in comparison to someone with a larger stress bucket and a low vulnerability to stress. So those arrows coming into the bucket there reflect the different stresses in our lives, flowing into the bucket and filling it up. This could be things like maybe our health, and family relationship stress. So as that flows in, dependent on the size of your stress bucket, depends how much stress that you'll be able to hold before it overflows. And when it does start to overflow, this is reflected by the arrow to the right, we might see different things like irritability, indecisiveness, we might be engaging in unhelpful coping mechanisms, might be tired or have stomachache, for example. So we'll see different things when we do start to become stressed and when our stress bucket starts to overflow. And then what we need to do is think about that tap to the bottom left there. So when we're in a good place, maybe engaging in helpful coping strategies, like exercise, for instance, talking to other people, then our tap will be able to turn on and release the stress in our stress bucket. So then we will be able to handle different stresses in our lives. But if we're not coping so well, and maybe we're not engaging in very helpful coping strategies, for example, then that tap is going to remain shut, and then that bucket is going to fill and fill, and then it's going to overflow. So any little stresses that might seem very minor actually are going to become a really big deal because we just can't hold it and we can't manage that stress like we normally can, because we need to relieve some of it from our stress bucket.
The circle of control concept can be helpful for working with anxiety, as it helps you to identify situations that you can control versus situations that you can't. If working with a child, you might like to explain this concept and help them to focus their time and energy and emotions on the things they can influence, and encourage them to let go of and not waste time and energy on the things that they can't.
Problem solving is a really good strategy for taking away the unknown from situations. This is very good for our what-if thinkers or people who avoid doing things in case something happens. It allows us to create a plan for that unknown. For example, we'll think of a young person who doesn't want to go to school in case they're picked on. So first of all, we work out exactly what the problem is. Well, we know that the problem is that they think they're going to be picked on. We think about the possible solutions to the problem. So this includes every possible solution, whether we agree with it or not. So for example, our young person may say, I'm not going to go to school. They might have another solution, which is if they pick on me, I'm going to pick on them back. They might say, I'm going to ask a member of staff for some help when I get to school. So we don't have to agree with all their solutions, like I say. They might be totally absurd solutions, but it's important that we consider all of them. We look at the pros and cons for each solution, and we decide which one we're going to take based on that. And then we encourage them to implement it. Once they have implemented it, it's really important that we review how it went. By reviewing it, we can establish that actually maybe it wasn't something they really needed to be worried about, or it may be that there's a few changes that need making. On the whole, this process is generally very successful, and as I say, it's very good for bringing a sense of control to situations for those who are worried about the unknown.
Gradual exposure is where you face your fears and worries by gradually putting yourself into situations that you would normally avoid because of your anxiety. One way to do this is by creating an exposure ladder. If we have a look at the example on the slide, this person's fear is dogs, and they navigate their life around avoiding dogs. What you want to do is put at the top of the ladder your end goal. So for this example, the end goal is to stroke a dog. You would then put at the bottom of the ladder your first step to reach that goal, and this first step should incite some anxiety, but it should be manageable. Between this first step and the end goal would then be situations that would move you closer towards this end goal. And after each stage, you would then rate your anxiety from 1 to 10, and you'd move on to the next step of the ladder when you're ready. So you can stay on one step for a bit longer if needed, or if any of the steps become too difficult, then break it down further. And after each step you make, it's really good to reward yourself, to incentivize yourself. Also, incorporating other strategies during this, which are mentioned later on in the session, such as trying some breathing techniques, may help reduce your anxiety in those situations and make them more manageable. So if you do have any anxieties where you avoid situations, then this may be a good technique to try.
It's so important to remember how talking can help and give us some support. Talking is a way of us expressing our feelings, challenging our thoughts, and looking at how we can move forward with any problem solving skills. What we need to do is identify somebody that we know we can talk to in confidence and actually gives us the right guidance at the right time. So always remember the importance of finding the right person to talk to, even if it's finding professionals within schools, anywhere that you feel someone can help you so that you can express your feelings.
As explained in the second anxiety video, the process of thinking realistically is also really beneficial and effective in reducing our anxious thoughts.
Having an anxiety diary in these times can also help. Sometimes it's a great idea to write down our thoughts and feelings, or even to write down a to-do list. This way, the thoughts of anxiety and stress that cause us to feel even worse, by putting them down on paper, can help us to relieve some of the pressures of anxiety. So think about using a diary and either dating it so that you know what you're going to do each day and then you can tick it off, even if it's just simple things you write down, or maybe at the end of the day, write down what you've achieved and what you feel you've reached that by the end of that day. The diary is a way of us releasing these thoughts and stresses from our brains. When we think about different things to use for our children, we can use what we call a worry box or a worry monster. If we look back at what we discussed about having an anxiety diary, sometimes if they want to share, and remember, if they're writing in an anxiety diary, they may not want to share what's in there, but they may want to put some of their anxieties into the worry box or to the worry monster. If they don't want to do that, they may just want to put something, on a post-it note, what their worries are, put them in the worry box, and it's left there for the worry box to deal with. Sometimes with children, if there's like a third party, as in the worry monster, they're more likely to talk, so they might find talking to the worry monster helps. All these things are ways that we can use to support our children in struggling with anxiety, giving them ways to alleviate it, having time to reflect and put things away so that it's taking the anxiety away from them. We're giving it to the worry box, we're giving it to the worry monster.
Worry time is for our people who have quite obsessive thinking or who struggle to take their mind off of their worries. You'd probably use it more so for your older students and adults. So you allocate a period of time, only about 15-20 minutes, in which that person can really think and reflect on what is worrying them, and they can only think about it in that moment in time. It may be that you work with your young person in this time, or it may be that they're quite capable of doing it independently. But you have to ensure that they are able and skilled to take their worries away or take their mind off of their worries in the meantime. So during worry time, you will identify what's worrying you. You identify what you can do to address the worry. You can talk to someone or write your worries down during this time and what you might do about them. You set a time limit for this process and you set yourself rules to ensure you stick to them. So as it says on the tin, it's a time to reflect, to problem solve, to really get to know your worry and get to know what you're going to do about your worry and challenge it. Sometimes it's totally okay for us to be feeling a little bit anxious, providing it's not overwhelming. In this case, it's totally okay just to accept it. By doing this, by naming the emotion, telling ourselves, I'm feeling anxious, this can be out loud or it can be in our heads, and then moving on from that feeling and just accepting it. It prevents us from ruminating. This is lingering on that feeling. This is carrying on with our anxious thoughts. Because as soon as we do that, we run the risk of slipping into a vicious cycle of anxiety and making our anxiety worse. By naming an emotion, it also tames the stress response in our brain, making us feel calmer. So like I say, it's important that sometimes we just accept that we're feeling anxious and it's totally okay and it's time to move on.
Another thing we can do is have a look at different grounding exercises. So these are particularly useful when in the moment when we're feeling quite anxious and overwhelmed, and also when we might be experiencing panic or panic attacks. So if we look at the left exercise, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 exercise, and what you do for that is to have a think about 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch or feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So as you can recognise, this is just about distracting us away from maybe those different spiralling thoughts or that feeling of unsafe or overwhelmed emotions. And then on the right, you've just got a different flyer here of some ways that we can help to ground ourselves. So we can think about the body by maybe laying on the ground, pushing our toes into the floor, squeezing Play-Doh. So there's different sensory things there. Looking at the 5 senses, so wearing your favourite sweatshirt, something that feels nice against your body, using essential oils or having a cup of tea. Soothing ourselves maybe through different things like lighting a candle, taking a shower or bath, observing as well different things in our surroundings. So maybe we might describe an object in detail. We might talk about the different colours, the shadows, the lights, the shapes. So again, distracting our thoughts there away from whatever it is that's causing the anxiety. Different breathing exercises to help calm us down. So we might do 4-7-8 breathing. So that would be inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 7 seconds, and exhaling for 8. Or distracting. So find all the squares or green objects in a room. Or can you do your times tables in 7s? Can you tell me the date? Just different distracting exercises as well, to make us be present in the here and now and not kind of lost in those different anxious thoughts and feelings.
We mentioned in part 2 of the anxiety sessions that stimulating the vagus nerve can help reduce anxiety. And here are some of the ways in which we can stimulate the vagus nerve. So we have bitter taste receptors on the tongue, which helps stimulate the vagus nerve. So when we eat bitter foods, that's really useful in stimulating this. Loud gargling with water or loud singing and chanting helps activate our vocal cords, which then in turn stimulates the vagus nerve and taps into that. We can also tap into this through different breathing techniques and deep, slow belly breaths. This helps calm the body down. Movements such as walking, sprints and weights also tap into this, and massaging. So gentle or firm touch can help assist in stimulating the vagus nerve. Cold water exposure, so washing your face with cold water or even having a cold shower can help fire this vagus nerve and helps change our state of mind. It also helps decrease our heart rate, which releases anxiety and unease. Laughter is also another way in which you can stimulate this, and it helps lift your mood and boost your immune system. So these are just some of the ways in which you can stimulate the vagus nerve. So if you are interested in this, please feel free to research this or have a look further into this.
Ways that we can find to help are through relaxation techniques. It's important to understand the more we refocus our minds and our thoughts, it's a way of us relaxing. There's some good apps here that you can use that can help you, and this you might find to do the same time every day. You might find that is something you do overnight just before you go to sleep, because often with anxiety we can have trouble sleeping. But please remember the importance of being mindful to relax our bodies and our minds and think about ways to help and support ourselves. The next slide, just to introduce you, is a guided meditation for children that you can use.
Do you ever feel like your thoughts and feelings are sometimes like crazy, energetic monkeys jumping around in your head? Do you ever feel like your thoughts are loud, sometimes causing too much noise and distraction? Well, sometimes our thoughts and worries can take over, and often we need to tell those little monkeys to relax. All it takes is a helpful adventure to tell those monkey thoughts to go to sleep for a little while. This is the perfect time to let them relax so you can reset and recharge. Let's begin by making yourself as comfy and cozy as possible in your chair. Maybe even cross your arms and place your head on your desk. Or, if you are on the floor, get yourself into a position that feels really relaxing. The trick is to try and be as still as you can, as silent as you can. It's time now to close your eyes and begin to drift into a dream-like world. Start to let yourself feel a little sleepy, letting go of all the games you've played today, all the work you've completed, all the things that you've learned, giving yourself a little break as we go on this amazing, helpful adventure. Today, we are off to the exotic jungle. Let your eyelids feel heavy. Allow yourself to be sleepy, peaceful, and calm. Begin to take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Take 2 more deep breaths like that. Inhale and exhale. Now try to exhale a little slower than you just did. Inhale. Exhale even slower. Good job. Then let your breath go back to the way it naturally moves. As you take your next deep breath in, I want you to imagine you are breathing in the fresh jungle air. Can you smell the fresh fruit and flowers blooming? Let's get lost in our helpful jungle adventure. Continue to breathe in the sweetness of the plants, the berries, the fruit growing high in the trees, the flowers bursting from all around you. Slowly look up at the tall, leafy palms, reaching out their arms across the blue, sunny sky. Can you see coconuts as they hang high up near those leaves? Now look a little to the left. Keep looking up. See if you could notice the next tree. And if you look even closer, notice the ripe bananas hiding in that bright emerald green banana tree. Listen closely to the ruffling of the trees. What could it be? Is there something coming? Ah, I see. There's a quiet but happy, cheering and chirping monkey swinging playfully from branch to branch. He gets closer and closer until you notice one of his hairy brown hands reach out to grab one of the bananas. He skillfully peels it and quickly and slickly pops the sweet fruit into his mouth. He looks down and smiles at you, and then he makes his way into a comfy spot on a thick tree. He begins to curl in to a sleepy, sleepy space, just like you. It's time for the monkey to rest and to soak up the warmth and the magic of this jungle world. Next, I want you to look up and notice the claws of a bird gripping and balancing on a long branch above, high up in the trees. Can you see rainbow colors on a bird's wings? Keep looking. Notice the ruby reds, the sunshine bright yellows, the grassy greens, and the ocean-like blues as they blend into the most amazing coat of feathers on this exotic parrot as he speaks to the insects, the toucan, the cheetahs, the frogs, and the flowers all around him. See if you can almost hear him and all the other animals having quiet conversations. It's time for you to look around and explore this enchanted jungle. Can you see patterns on the butterfly's wings as it softly lands on your chest? Which animals have come over to visit you? What can you hear? What else do you see? What kinds of things can you smell? How do you feel? And maybe even think about what you can taste. The jungle is so magical. It's an amazing place that you can take your mind to anytime you need to recharge, to relax, and just reset. If your mind is busy, like the monkeys and the jungle animals sometimes, just take time to drift away like we just did. Maybe even bring yourself back to this amazing jungle and get lost with the animals, playing and resting in paradise. But for now, we must bring ourselves back to reality. I'll invite you to wave goodbye in your mind's eye to the animals, maybe even wink at the cheetah, reminding them that you will be back very soon. Begin to wiggle your toes. Open and close your hands, bringing life back into your body. Has your monkey mind settled at all? I hope so. Begin to sit up if you aren't already, but move really slowly. And then bring your palms to touch, rubbing your hands together to create some energy, some warmth. Let's bring ourselves back into the room. Next, I want you to bring your hands over your eyes, cover them up. Start to flutter your eyelids open and closed, kind of like a butterfly's wings. And then bring your hands back down, placing them on your desk, ready to learn. You are now back in the classroom, hopefully feeling refreshed and ready to try new things. Have a lovely rest of your day, and thank you for coming along on this helpful adventure today.
You might like to encourage a child or young person to make a mindfulness jar. It can be used as a visual timer for short mindful breathing exercises, or also if a child is upset, they can use it as a visual metaphor. They can shake the jar and watch the glitter move around, and then as the glitter begins to settle, they can relate this to the idea that their mind is starting to settle too.
Another thing we can do is mindful colouring. So to make colouring mindful, it's important that we don't think about the past. So we don't think I've never been good at drawing, or the future, so anticipating what the drawing might look like. It's about remaining in the here and now and staying present in that moment. So you can do things like paying attention to your senses whilst you're colouring. So your sight, your touch, your hearing, your smell and your taste in that moment. And taking time to slow down and observe. So it might be observing the sound of the pencil as it moves across the page, or the different colours that you can see or that you're putting into the colouring as well. So this is another good way to help ease our anxiety.
Here are some good breathing techniques that you can use with young people. It's important when you're doing them with young people to try and keep them visual or try and make them seem a little bit fun. This takes the seriousness away from it, and we also don't want them to feel anxious about getting it right. Breathing techniques are really important and really successful and powerful in reducing anxiety. This is because they calm the stress response in our brain.
It's so important for us to remember during these times to have fun and enjoy ourselves. This is something that we forget because anxiety can take over and we miss that part of ourselves. So try and find time for this every day. Give yourself some things that you can look forward to and focus on, and it will really increase your positive energy and your levels, not only for you but those around you. So think about ways you can have fun. Keep it simple, don't make it difficult. Just think about having fun. Watch something funny that makes you laugh, but remember this is also really important.
Exercise and physical activity is a really good way of reducing anxiety. It's important to do it not just when we're feeling anxious, but all of the time to maintain that sense of positive well-being. It burns away the adrenaline that's built up during anxiety. In order to fight, flight, or freeze, our body has to make lots of changes, and this is done a lot using adrenaline. And when we don't do the fight, the flight, or the freeze in sense of really running miles or actually fighting an animal away, we don't use up as much as our body wants us to. So physical activity is really good for getting rid of that excess adrenaline. It also releases lots of feel-good hormones that just make us feel happier in general.
We need to understand that our lifestyles can impact on our anxiety. The importance of having a healthy living environment for all of the family makes things a lot easier. It's difficult when we're suffering with anxiety because we can't see that this is something we need to do. But the importance of this makes all the difference. We need to have regular times that we eat. We need to exercise. And that doesn't mean any of these things to live healthily. We have to go mad. 5 minutes a day of just doing some exercise, having a bedtime routine, looking at how we sleep, looking at how to reduce stimulants into our diet. All these things are going to help us to live healthily. And often when we're in a state of anxiety, we can't see this. So sometimes what we need to do is go back to basics and just start living healthily so that everything else can then fall into place. So how do we be assertive? This is a skill we all have to learn, and this is a way that we can move forward and feel that we have some control over our lives. Being assertive makes everything difficult, and we can push forward to have things that we need. So think about what you are, how you do things, how you say things, and maybe just start trying some self-talk to yourself about this is what I want and this is what I will look at getting. And it doesn't mean we have to be aggressive. Assertive is a way of putting our thoughts and opinions forward so that we can be heard and listened to. And often we have to keep repeating this. And often we have to learn to say no to certain things and not feel guilty about that. It's okay to not do everything, and it's okay to express how we feel and how we think about things. The way we do this is we are not going to try and say things so that we want to hurt others. It's just expressing our own opinions and thoughts and feeling confident in doing that. Yes, this is something that takes time. This doesn't happen overnight, and this is something that we have to continue to work on. But being assertive does help to alleviate a lot of our anxieties because we can at last be in control.